Hey guys, Kakarot197 again, with another question of the week. This time asked by Xi Gundam. How many Operation V units were present at Site 7 by the time the White Base came to pick up the suits, as well as when the Zaku 2 reconnaissance team attacked? In the anime, we saw a Guncannon and Guntank get destroyed, but we were never told exactly how many specific units, Guntank, Guncannon, and Gundam, were present. On the Gundam wiki, it says that the White Base was able to hold a maximum capacity of 6 mobile suits. I was wondering if you would know how many of the 3 Operation V units would have initially been intended for delivery to Jaburo Base had Site 7 not been attacked. Okay, so first things first, the fact that the White Base has a, let's say a standard capacity of 6 mobile suits is definitely technically correct. In both of the front legs of the Trojan horse, there are like 3 mobile suit hangars right next to the catapult deck for storing and servicing mobile suits. So on paper, that would give us a full capacity of 6 mobile suits. But of course, that wouldn't stop anyone from storing extra mobile suits as they saw fit. It might get a little bit cramped, but if you look at scenes from the anime, there should definitely be enough room to store some extra mobile suits on the mobile suit deck. And, well, since they're also prototypes that weren't meant to go into a war zone or be launched into battle at a moment's notice, they might even be shipped in containers that would go into the White Base cargo compartment. Basically, as long as there's room and the White Base isn't overburdened, she can probably carry quite a few mobile suits. It's just that she's designed to comfortably carry those 6 mobile suits into battle and also easily maintain and service them. But even then, in the anime itself, we see quite a few examples of mobile suits riding on top of Magellan and Salamis class ships to be carried into battle. So I would say that it's very likely for the White Base to have floated all of the mobile suits present at Site 7 and then delivered them to Jaburo for further evaluation. I haven't seen any specifics mentioned, but I feel like the insinuation was that the White Base did come to pick up all of them, by the way. So now, let's have a look at how many all of them were. So first, from what the anime tells us, it is basically like you said, when the Zaku recon team moves onto the offensive, we see them destroying a total of 1 Guncannon and 1 Guntank, and later on we see Amuro use the Super Napalm to destroy a wrecked Guncannon and wrecked Guntank. And going by their position, I think it's safe to assume that it's the same 2 that were attacked in the Zaku attack. Which then brings our total up to 2 Guntanks, 2 Guncannons, and 1 Gundam, purely going by the anime. So then, for the exact numbers, mobile suit variation and the Gunpla manual of the RX-78-1 come to the rescue. So for the Guntanks, we know that Unit 2, 3, and 4 were present on Site 7 during the attack, and that according to the Entertainment Bible books, the RX-78-4 unit that we got to see in the anime was the 3rd unit. And we get a very similar story for the Guncannon. Of the 6 initial RX-77-2 units that were made, 3 were shipped off to Site 7, but only 1 would make it on board of the White Base. Oh, and by the way, am I the only one who was under the assumption that the 2nd Guncannon that got added to the White Base's mobile suit complement was a damaged Guncannon from Site 7 that was repaired at Jaburo Base? And just in case someone is still thinking that, as far as we know, that Guncannon that was added was just a brand new unit. And then finally, we get to the RX-78 Gundams, where things get slightly different. Just like the former, 3 units were present at Site 7. But during their time there, you might not have immediately recognized them as the units that they actually were. Unit 1 started its life basically as we all know it now, the RX-78-1 prototype Gundam, but after arriving at Site 7, it was repainted in a demo color scheme, which was very close to the color scheme that we now associate with the RX-78-2, and then later on, it was upgraded to the RX-78-2 spec. First, without changing the color scheme, before then finally being made identical to the RX-78-2 that we're now all familiar with. And talking about the RX-78-2, this is a number that we now closely associate with the second Gundam, the one that was piloted by Amuro Ray in the anime. But this unit actually also started its life as an RX-78-1 unit, being rolled out at the same time as Unit 1. The only thing that's a bit confusing here is that it's described as having the same specs and armor as Unit 1, but almost all depictions of Unit 2 in its rollout color scheme show it with the armor of the RX-78-2. And at the time that the armor and specs were upgraded to those of the RX-78-2, the silver color was changed to white, which I guess might be what the manual and box art of the prototype Gundam are showing, but there is still a bit of silver here and there. But whatever the case might be, it would eventually be repainted in the tricolor demo color scheme that it's now so famous for. Unit 3 then, which we now all know as the RX-73 Gundam, also known as the G3 Gundam, was actually rolled out as the first RX-78-2 unit, making this thing the original RX-78-2. And like I just said, Unit 2 would then be upgraded to its specs, becoming the RX-78-2 that we're all familiar with. But putting that aside, Unit 3 was rolled out after the first two units and was also shipped to Site 7 at a later date because of that. As for the color scheme then, it's described as being the same color as Unit 1, which to me then sounds like it used the earlier tricolor color scheme. Later on then, the color scheme would also be changed to the tricolor scheme that we all now associate with the RX-78-2. And if you're wondering then why Unit 3 is now commonly known as the RX-78-3 despite being, well, the first RX-78-2, well, that is because later on it was upgraded with things like enhanced thrusters and a magnetic coating, pushing it beyond the specs of the RX-78-2 and then being reclassified as the RX-78-3. And yes, it is also said that the RX-78-2 that we're all familiar with, Unit 2 piloted by Amuro Ray, was also redesignated as an RX-78-3 after receiving its own magnetic coating upgrade. So, that was just a quite long explanation to tell you that the three Gundams at Site 7 didn't look like three very distinct mobile suits, each with their own different model number, but were actually three RX-78-2s in the same tricolor color scheme. So, what then happened with all three of them is a bit more difficult to say than with the Guncannon or the Guntank. The easiest one is, of course, Unit 2, the main Gundam. Unit 3 then is also still relatively easy because we know that it got damaged during the attack and that it got loaded onto the wide base. And the most common theory of what happened afterwards is that it got dropped off at Luna 2, but there's also another theory that says that it remained on board until Operation Odessa, where it was then transferred to the Augusta New Type Lab, after which it was shot into space to participate in Operation Star 1. And participating in that operation is where both theories align again. It was for this operation that the thing had magnetic coating applied along with the other upgrades, turning it into the RX-78-3. And then finally, Unit 1 is the most mysterious. Supposedly, it got heavily damaged during the attack, but there are no confirmed records of it being destroyed on Site 7 or being loaded onto the wide base. Personally, I would like to believe that they scavenged what they could from Unit 1 and use it as spare parts for Unit 2, like, for example, remember when Sayla took out the Gundam for a drive and, like, the foot got heavily damaged? but was replaced relatively quickly. Yeah, something like that. But whatever the case might be, this means that in total, there were 9 mobile suits being tested out at Site 7. 3 RX-75 for Guntanks, 3 RX-77-2 Guncannons, and 3 RX-78-2 Gundams. And if they really wanted, like I said in the beginning, they could have probably found space to store all of them on the wide base, but in the end, they didn't have to worry about that because only one functional unit of each would make it on board. And then I wanted to end this question of the week with some good news for the people who've been longing for a GIM development history. Now, while I don't always do my development histories in chronological order, a good example being the Dagger, which is the Gundam Seed variant of the GIM, I did want to tackle the Operation V machines in chronological order. So this means that the GIM would come after the RX-78-2. And part of me kind of procrastinating on the RX-78-2's development history was the confusion surrounding the model numbers and how those things got rolled out and whatnot, because it turns out it's not as easy as Unit 1 just being the RX-78-1, Unit 2 being the RX-78-2, and Unit 3 being the RX-78-3, which is something I think a lot of people kind of go with, and something apparently even some publications have gone with. And what makes this even more difficult is that outside of Japanese sources, there's really not that much out there. And even in those Japanese sources, there is conflicting information, which again does not make this any easier. For example, here's an excerpt from the Master Archive RX-78 book. It shows us quite a different original RX-78-1 Unit 1, and shows Unit 2 as having the same armor as the RX-78-2 spec from the get-go. But since it also contradicts some other things from the original manual, like Unit 2 being produced at a later date, and them being overhauled at Luna 2 instead of Site 7, I'm gonna do myself a favor and consider the Master Archive book as nice eye candy, and stick to the Gunpla manual. Maybe I'll elaborate on both versions during the RX-72 development history itself. I'll see what I do with that. But anyways, now that I finally managed to wrap my head around it, somewhat, I'm gonna go ahead and make the RX-78 Gundam's development history. After which, it shouldn't be too much longer before I get to the GIM development history. Although at this point in time, I haven't decided yet how I'm going to structure things, because just like the Zaku's development history, the GIM's development history is quite involved. Let's put it like that. There's quite some different things going on at the same time, so it's not a very linear progression. So then, all that's left to say is that if you have a question you want me to answer during a Question of the Week video, leave a comment down below. As always, a big thank you to the Patreon supporters. I hope everyone watching has a great day, and I'll see you all next time.